Hey Emily, I figured it out and I wanted to make you a quick video. So let me start by saying your flow is awesome. It works. It gets the job done. It's easy to understand, easy for your client to be able to maintain it. I don't think you need to make any changes to it, but if you want to make it more scalable, then the way to do that is to use as few pink buttons as possible. And so I figured out how to make this flow, and it only has two, which means it's going to run faster. And if you're running it on a lot of records at a time, you're less likely to hit limits, and it's just a little bit more elegant. So what I did was built a flow very similar to yours. So it's created or updated after save. We get the campaign member statuses that are related to the campaign we're on. I think yours does the same thing. And then we're going to loop through all of them. And then basically what I did was I created temporary statuses that are going to be updated when the flow finds them in the loop. And so, for example, it's going to go through every status. So the first one, is the status sent? If yes, we're going to take this variable for sent and we're going to check it off. And the way we're going to check it off is we're going to give it a status and we're going to give it an ID that come from the data. So sent, I could even, instead of typing in sent, I could even say current loop, and then label. So I could say take the label, if it matches, take the label from the one you're on, but I just typed in sent, even though it's hard code, it doesn't really matter. And then I also gave it an ID, which is the ID of the loop we're on. So basically we're now making a double. So we have the record we're on and we're taking the ID of it and we're putting it onto a fake version, a temporary data version, a variable of that record, and we're doing that for all of them, which lets us manipulate them inside of the flow without having to get each one using a search. Another reason why you might want to do this is if you have 12 statuses, then there's a limit in flow. You can only have 150 pinks, get 150 DMLs. So things can get kind of exponential, because if you have to get everything and then you have to create everything, that's only gives you 75 records because you're doing it twice for each one. So this is a nice way to consolidate and economize them. You can have as many of these bad gender expansive elements as you want to. They don't really cost us anything. They're just logic. So we're just updating shadow versions of these statuses so that we can then look for them in this section. It looks like a loop, not a loop. So this is a loop that's going through each one, and this one is just a logic loop that just says, okay, that fake variable that we created, has it been assigned a status yet? The only way it would have been assigned a status if it was already in there. So if it already exists, do nothing. If it doesn't exist, and this is where some magic happens. So if attended doesn't exist, then we're going to populate fields for it. So assignments are so confusing. I'm still learning them myself. But the first assignment is giving the fake record field values. So we're going to say, call it attended, responded is true, give it an ID. So, and this could be any field you want. You're filling it's like you're creating a record, but it's just a fake one. So you can populate any field you want. You can populate them with formulas, you can hard code them, whatever you want. And then the second one here is adding to a bucket. I call it a bucket. That's not the technical word for it. So you could just put a a create here. And I think that's how you have it in your flow. And there's nothing wrong with that unless you hit the limit of having 150. So instead of putting a create right here, all I'm doing is saying, I have this bucket called things I need to create, and I'm saying add this thing that I just populated to that bucket. That's all this is doing. It's just putting it in the bucket, and we're going to save it for later. We're going to fill up the bucket with status records that we want to create, and then we're going to do one big create at the end. So this one is like the simplest one. All it's doing is taking that bucket and it's like, I guess I'm going to create everything that's in there. And what's it going to create? The records that are in there based on the field values that we populated through the assignment. So let's do an example. So I'm going to debug this. Oh, let me see. I must have changed something. Okay. So I'm going to debug this. I'm going to do the Emily is Awesome campaign. Run it. So let's look at what it did. So it started here. It went through the loop for each one. It found sent. It found responded. It didn't find attended. And I was like, okay, I went through all of them. I'm done now. Go around here. Does attended exist? No, it doesn't exist. See, this is all gray. This is orange. It doesn't exist. Let me figure out what field it should have, put it in the bucket, and create everything that's in the bucket. So this part and this part is what you would be duplicating for each of the values that you care about. Okay, now let's look at it for real. So I'm in Classic because I was too lazy to change the page layout. So you can see here on Emily is Awesome, there's only 2 statuses. Now I'm going to edit the record. I'm just going to say it's active. And now when we go to advanced setup, it showed up. So it does at the end of the day, it's getting to the same result as you. It's just getting there in literally a more roundabout way because we have a loop and we have more assignments. But it's ultimately going to be a little bit more scalable and a little bit more best practice-y if that's important to you. I don't necessarily think this is better. I think it's just another way of answering the problem based on some ways of using flows that I've had some opportunities to practice. So take it or leave it. And I'm so excited to be building these skills with you. Okay, bye.